You're listening to the Visionary Lifestyle Podcast, the show that's dedicated to raising consciousness and empowering you to activate your highest potential. I'm your host, Magda Freedom Rod. Greetings from Bali, my beloved rainbow warriors. Well, the monsoon season is upon us here, and today I saw some of the heaviest rain I've ever seen in my life. And that is saying a lot since I grew up in Hawaii. And speaking of Hawaii, today's guest and I have that in common, which makes it pretty funny that we had to go all the way to Rishikesh, India to meet each other. Our guest today is Katie Fisher. Katie is an artist, activist, musician, healer, a practitioner of Chinese medicine, a global traveler, and a facilitator of sound healing. I met Katie at the International Yoga Festival in Rishikesh. I was immediately drawn to her sound healing classes and her set of rainbow wands, or tuning forks as they're called actually. And I attended some of her classes and became more and more intrigued with the techniques she was teaching and how she was connecting the practices to yoga. We touch on a lot of different topics in this interview, like yoga, marma points, and acupuncture, the chakras, the solfeggio frequencies, cymatics, sound healing, medicine resonance, and vibration as a healing frequency. Katie shares some of her toys with us, so listen closely and please do your best to ignore the background noise. We sat down in a quiet place on this one and soon after got flooded with some noisy neighbors, so please bear with it while it lasts because later in the interview, we get to some really juicy nuggets you don't want to miss. Katie has a sound healing school in Hawaii called Hawaiian Healing Sound School. And if you've been trying to make sense of all the talk about frequencies like 432 hertz and the Schumann frequency in the music these days, you'll get some answers in this show. So don't forget to check out the show notes for links to Katie's website, hawaiihealingsoundschool.org, and also a great YouTube video link of another informative interview with her. And if you haven't already jumped into my community group on Facebook, guys, you are invited. I've really activated that group and I'm doing daily live sessions in there, teaching all kinds of visionary lifestyle topics and even doing some live podcast interviews in there. That's the Visionary Lifestyle and Podcast Community Group on Facebook. Please do check it out and come and say hello. I hope you find some inspiration and practical tips and maybe even experience some sound healing through the tones that Katie shares in this interview. Enjoy and namaste. Katie Fisher, welcome to the show.
Woo, I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. I've taken 2 of your classes here at the International Yoga Festival so far.
Yeah, you've really contributed a lot. It's been nice to have you in those rooms. They're so filled in India, aren't they?
Oh my gosh, they're overflowing. We had to turn people away today.
And we don't have any chairs. People sit on the floor.
We're yogis.
We're yogis.
That's what happened.
In Rishikesh, yeah. We're the heart of yoga.
Right, and we're from Hawaii, so aloha.
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 We're both from Oahu originally. It's just amazing.
It's a beautiful connection.
Yeah, it is. I was so drawn to the work that you're doing because I do a lot of work with the chakras. I do chakra balancing. I teach it in my yoga. I'm just as much as I can bring people's awareness to the energy body and vibration. That's what I want to do. And so when I stepped into your class and I saw these rainbow colored tuning forks and we were talking about what was the class today? I want you to say it. About the medical, vibrational
the medicine vibration class. Yes. Yeah, vibration is medicine. Well, I taught 3 classes here. The first one was mudra, mantra, and marma points, which was the Ayurvedic term for acupuncture points. Because I am an acupuncturist in Hawaii, I practice.
Right. Are they the same points? Sorry to
interrupt.
There are
117 marma points that are similar to the acupuncture points. There's probably 365 well-documented acupuncture points that are in the vernacular.
Okay.
And there's 117 that cross over with that.
Okay.
So the hand, for example, if you put the thumb in the middle of your hand,
right,
that's both a marma point and an acupressure point.
Okay.
And there's many points that are both marma and acupuncture.
Okay, got it.
So we use the forks on those points, and that was really fun. People enjoyed activating their internal rivers. We're by the Ganga, so we got to talk about the meridians inside and on our surface with the acupuncture points. We call them marma because we're in India, and we speak in the Ayurvedic term. And plus I studied Ayurveda before acupuncture.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, 2 years at Mount Madonna with Baba Haridas and Sridhar Shastra. And I think a lot of yoga teachers are familiar with the marma points as well. They're anytime you put a hand on the knee or you put your hand on your third eye, for example, you're working with marma points or the vital points.
Right.
They actually come from a martial arts tradition. I think people might be curious that yoga comes from a martial arts tradition.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And I think what people learn is, if you can harm it, you have to be able to heal it. So when we learn the vital points in yoga, we're actually working with healing energy. So yoga practice is a way to activate and move the energies between the marma points. Or a big marma points are chakra points, those big vital points that run up. They kind of relate to the immune system or the endocrine system.
Right.
So that's always a nice way to connect the chakras to the endocrine.
Yeah. I always tell people that yoga is a self-healing tool.
Nice.
Right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a right to self-heal, don't we?
Right, absolutely. And we want to empower people to do that as much as we can. So that's a lot of my, inspiration for this interview is because I know that that's possible. And I've been learning, as my audience has been learning with me over the last year, that everything is vibration, everything is energy. Yep. So when you're doing this sound healing, it's all vibrational. You're talking about vibrational medicine. So this is so exciting to turn people onto this. I imagine that this conversation is brand new for a lot of my listeners. So I want to introduce them to this idea that sound can heal.
Well, let's give some examples from the scientific viewpoint that people will not have any doubt about that. For example, we could ask your listeners or tune in and see if they know anybody who's ever suffered from kidney stones. And a non-invasive medical treatment for kidney stones now is to use sonar that is a frequency that breaks apart the calcium crystals inside the kidney without having to cut the kidney open. Wow. So there's an example that's used in every modern day treatment of kidney stones to break apart the...
For example, how long does that take? Does that take a series of treatments, or is it one treatment? Or
no, it's pretty much one time. It basically blows apart or decimates or breaks apart the calcium crystals. And then the body naturally passes them, but they're in a much smaller form.
Right.
So this is an example of a modern day use of actual sound. It's a frequency that's considered sonogram, like an audible frequency. So there's a good one. I think people are also used to things like even X-ray or MRI are ways that frequency is used to map out the body, like the brain or the fluid or the bones have different kinds of density. And so different kinds of wavelength show up, whether it's fluid or cerebral spinal or bones, and then using a different kind of way of looking at them, they could map out with the frequencies.
Wow. So what are these solfeggio frequencies that you were working with today?
You want to jump right to the solfeggio.
Well, I'm so deeply interested. I just recently learned about this, and then there they were today, your whole kit of I want to call them magic wands. They're tuning forks, right? But they look like magic wands.
Yeah, well, I think you like them because they're color coded, and we just are so attracted to color.
That too. But solfeggio, this concept of solfeggio, could you explain what that is and why it's meaningful and helpful in healing?
Well, solfeggio. Let's play one right now. We'll play a 528. Let's go ahead and see if we can let your audience experience that. So we're playing two tuning forks. They're the same frequency. And frequency is simply a measurement of how rapid the wavelength moves through space in a distance. In this case, it's a second. So this tone we're playing right now is 528. And in the solfeggio, it's the mi. Let's try and do a little. Yeah. If our two tuning forks are tuned to the same frequency, and I play one of them and not the other, like I'll tap this one now, and I'll put it near yours. Now listen to yours. The tuning forks are cut to an exact frequency, and if they are the same, one will activate the other one by actually playing it.
I felt that in my hand
this
too.
is called like a harmonic resonance, or this is a way that we're entraining the tones together. So just an example, we're using one solfeggio fork, which happens to be 528. This would work for any tuning fork that was the same, but I'm letting the sound jump from one to the other one. And you can hear a little bit of a harmonic overtone there. So this is the mi, or mi. So in the singing of the tones in solfeggio, we can sing the different short names for those tones, just like in the traditional Indian music, they can pronounce the tones. They sing the tones. But in the solfeggio, this set we have, the re, mi, fa, sol, la. So we can play these tones as a singing, and people are probably familiar with that really fabulous movie. Do you remember that movie that had do a deer?
Yeah,
a female deer,
Yeah.
Ray, a drop of golden sun.
Yeah.
The Sound of Music.
Yes.
So there was a piece in The Sound of Music that used the ancient solfeggio tones to let the harmonics in the movie actually heal people.
Whoa.
So if we're audience just wants to spend a moment there, we could kind of hum it. We all know it.
Yeah, yeah.
Name I call myself far, a long, long way to run.
Right.
But in the tone, the name of the solfeggio tones are ut, re, mi, fa, sol, and la. And they each relate to a specific frequency. And we're using these tuning forks that are for off the body. So let's just play a few of those.
Because there are forks for off the body and forks for on the body.
And if they're on the body, they are needing to be a lower frequency. So even though they're still solfeggio, they are in a lower harmonic. So. Hold this one. So you'll notice that there are the individual tone, but what's really beautiful is when you activate them together, it's the space in between or the intervals that are really where the resonance in our body cavities are. So let's try that again. Like this is a ut tone. And you could say that this is good for the adrenals or the base of the spine. It feels like it's down at the lower chakra. You can feel this tone down in your first chakra base.
Yep.
That's at a 396 hertz. You could relate this to the earth element.
Right.
And let's go ahead and play the light, the purple at the top here.
So this is the third eye?
This could be the cranial or the brow. Initiation or sixth chakra. Let's play them together. Oop, a little feedback there. And let's play the heart chakra for a moment. This would be the, let's try the 528. So this is a 528 hertz, which means it's traveling through space at a speed of 528 waves a second. And we can combine that with the earth one, for example. And you can feel the interval between there. How's that feel to you?
Yeah, I can feel the vibration. Yeah. So you can use individual forks depending on if you identify a certain chakra as blocked or something. You could use that specific fork to open it, cleanse it, balance it. You
could, I'm coming from a Chinese background, and I think a lot of times like pharmacy wants to extract what they think is the critical essential part of the herb formula. But the truth is that a really good formula has a chief, that it has some envoy, that has some carrier. So you're looking more like the family, like how is the family going in. So for a moment, let's just look at the solfeggio as a system. And it's made of individual tones, so let's play them again. Yeah. So what we're really wanting to feel now is how the whole system works together. Like a lot of times people will say, oh, my thyroid is low. And so the attention in the Western medical model might be to, either add thyroid or maybe use radiation to take down an overactive thyroid. But there is a thing called a thyroid adrenal complex, which means when the adrenals have been working too hard and they've given up or they've done it all, then the thyroid kicks in as a secondary. So just to treat, for example, just the thyroid wouldn't really be appropriate. We're not treat the whole body, so the entire endocrine system can come back into harmony or into balance.
There you go, holistic.
Holistic. And it's funny how they use the word harmony, right? Bringing the body back into harmony. So I would, of course,
harmonic
say
resonance.
Harmonic resonance. We would say right now, please go see your doctor if you have questions about your thyroid or your hormone system.
Right.
But do keep an open mind and just think about the thyroid is not a single entity. It works along with the rest of the endocrine system to talk to everything. The pituitary gland, the thyroid, the thymus, the adrenals.
Right, so you would work with all the forks regardless of a person having one specific problem, because we want the whole system to be in harmony, and that's what's going to really bring the balance.
Yeah, it's a great moment to just say that we don't want to extract just one frequency. We want to look at how the intervals or the relationship. Like, we don't want to just take the mom out of the family. We want to have the mom and the dad and the children and the dog and the cat and the
grandparents.
House. Exactly. We want to look at the whole. So let's just again look at this. When we look at harmonics that work together, if we had a cymatic machine, we could see the shape of the tone. So the shape of the tone is also telling us that there's a relationship that is in it holds energy.
Cymatic being the machine that measures earthquakes and things, right?
No, cymatics is a way. Originally it was used as a plate that had like sand or salt sprinkled on it, and have generous work, and you put the violin string on it.
Yes,
and when you hit certain frequencies, the sand or the salt will jump,
takes shape,
and will create shapes. It look a lot like the building blocks of life when you look at marine biology.
Yes.
So, or even tie dye, like in Africa, you see the tie dye. It looks like
There are videos on YouTube of people doing this.
Let's spell
link
it
to some of those.
Okay. Cymatics.
Yes.
Yeah, so this will be the visual observation of audible sound waves.
Gotcha.
So let's listen again and see if we can feel a shape come through. Did you feel a sense of completion there, or a sense of wholeness? Let's do it again.
It feels curvy.
Feels curvy.
Yeah.
Let's
Some roundness. Soft.
So we could also, just for a moment, say that frequency could be seen as color. It could be expressed as chemistry. It could be seen as shape, and it could also be measured in like a wavelength. Like a visual.
Right.
And it can also be measured in mathematical. So for people who see geometric shapes, there's angles there. There's like a 360 angles in a circle. And the solfeggios work with inverted ratio proportions. So for those people that love numbers, they're going to love this, that the 741 is also the 417. It's an inverted ratio proportion. So the soul, which is blue, let's just play this, is this sound
the soul?
shape. The word soul. Remember do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti.
Oh, okay, got it.
So we're listening to math right now.
Wow, cool. But where does the 432 come in? Because we hear a lot about 432.
That's a good question. So the solfeggios in the system we're working with right now are 396, 417, 528, 639, 741, and 852. So that's not what you're asking about, 432. So there's a lot of passionate debate on the 432 compared to 440. So if you want to go into that for a moment, we could do that. So if you're a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, you could say that nature has its own tuning, and if you wanted to take it out of the natural tuning and put it into another tuning, which might be slightly not in harmony with the natural sounds. For example, the Earth Schumann is around 8.14, I think, right now. It fluctuates a bit, but the Schumann frequency of the Earth is around 8. And really, the best things to hear that are the whales. They actually have a vocal tone range that can start at 8, very low, and we don't really hear at 8, but you could start feeling things around 4, and then around 32 your bones can pick it up, and around 64 hertz It's an audible tone, of course, and 128, those are all intervals of 8. So those all work with a Schumann frequency, particularly in the bones. Those frequencies are good for bone pain, for bone joint pain. But you're asking about 432. 432 is the idea that nature is in a different tone than what most recorded music is these days. So when you look at symphonic tuning, whether it's 440 or 432, we're asking ourselves, when did that come into being? Like, when did we tune to the 440, which is the symphonic orchestra tuning? And it didn't really come into place until the 1940s. It came out of Germany, and there's a theory that where all of our music since the 1940s that's tuned to a symphony, tuned to 440, is tuned slightly out of pitch with our natural biological resonance. So you could ask, well, would someone actually want to do that, make us always slightly off of our natural innate rhythm or resonance pitch? And there's a movement to put music back to be grounded in 432. And just for fun, I have a tuning fork here. We could listen to the difference.
Sure.
And see if people can feel it. But they can go to the websites and listen to music in 432 concert tuning rather than 440. Most recorded music is in 440. And the idea is that you can run it through frequency sound generators that can put it back into 432. And this might be considered more biocompatible, more in tune with our actual heart resonance, or it can be considered to be beneficial to our natural rhythms. And even if you could say sound heals, then you could also say sound harms, like the martial art, you know, what you hurt, you can heal, what you heal, you can harm. You could say, is 432 a more beneficial resonance for our biofield, for the natural way our organs relate to the earth? So let me just play, I have a frequency tuner here, we'll play 40, 32, and 440. So we'll just go ahead and, let's see, just dial this into 440.
She's got her iPad out with this amazing app that has a tuning fork on it that she can adjust the dials. I wish you guys could see this. So this is 440.
So let's turn that up a little bit here. And here's 432. Should we go back and forth a few times?
Yeah, but to the untrained ear, it doesn't sound that different.
Let's listen again. This is 432. Quite a bit different.
Yeah. When you hear it a couple times, sure.
Let's turn that off for now. You know, they say that there's a hair in the ear for every single hertz. The human ear, and the cochlea, has one hair for every single hertz. And if you have damage and those hairs lay down flat, you don't get to hear that frequency anymore.
Oh, wow.
This is really important so that people, when they put the earbuds for all the music in their ears, especially at a young age, when you cause damage, when those hairs lie flat, they then miss hearing those frequencies. It could be permanent
damage.
Good news is our bodies feel the frequencies. Like even a deaf person can enjoy all kinds of frequencies. But the ear is very finely tuned. Let's just do one more example of hearing some, we'll just do off by 100. This is 432, and this is 528. This is 438. 428. This is 528.
Yeah, big difference.
Okay, let's just do 10. This is 428, and this is 438. This is 428, and this is 427. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So each hair is vibrating to tell us where we are in space and time. And that's really interesting to think about. So it's really good to know that we have inside of our own bodies our own tuning fork. And you can make any tone you want. Let's go low. Ready? Let's go as high as we can. And this practice is called Brahmari, right? Bee humming in the yoga practice.
Right.
And the Nod yoga, the study of sound current. Let's go high again. Here we go. If you're in the audience, come join us. Put your tongue in your mouth and really go high and make your head tingly. Here we go. And let's drop down to low. Yeah, so that was fun.
Okay, so how does this fit with nada yoga or nad yoga, the yoga of sound? Bringing it into the yogic sphere, the yogic perspective under that yoga umbrella.
Right, like how many times you started or ended a class with the word Om.
Right.
Right. And we're not here to take apart the sound of Om, but we are here to kind of notice that it goes from the unsounded to the sounded. So there's a lot of traditions, like all the traditions, Sufi, Hinduism, Christianity, all have this idea of then there was the word and the word was God, or there was the creation. So you have to ask, well, what was before creation, right? Well, there was no sound. And it's interesting to notice in a physics viewpoint that if there's no if there's a vacuum, there's no sound. Sound must have matter to travel. It jumps from particle to particle. So then it goes in a wave format. It's actually using particle to particle. Like we're talking right now, but the air molecules are transferring our sounds. But if you have no air particles, if you have vacuum, sound doesn't travel. That's really interesting to think about that. Light will travel through a vacuum. You can shoot a laser off into space, but you can't, send a big aloha into space. It won't go into the vacuum.
Because it needs to bounce off of something?
It uses the particles to jump from, it actually uses matter to travel. So if you think about that, if there's an unsounded sound, you're basically saying before there was a material universe, and then after you have sound, or the crack of sound, you're basically saying we have a three-dimensional world, we have space. And then once you have space and air, then you can have sound. So this is a very mystical concept. So you could look at any tradition and talk about sound as a creator. In the tradition of the Hindus, they have this idea that Ram took Shiva's bow and cracked it. And once he cracked the bow, that made the beginning of what we know as the cosmos now.
Right.
And so we could look at the unsounded sound and then the sound. So the study of the actual sound, once the sound has been created, is the Nad Brahma. This is the idea that sound is a creator. And a lot of our yoga traditions are based in the Vedic scriptures, and this idea that Om is the generative creative sound. So first there's nothing, and then there's vibration. Right. And now we know there's something because we can hear it. If there's nothing, we don't hear it. We might be able to see it because there's light, but we don't get to hear it. So this is interesting. It's not just about having ears, it's about, does the universe have the particles to carry sound? And so once we're in this manifested form, once Amkaya has been created, this consciousness has been created, this world, we have sound. And then from there, all the stories can be told about creation.
Right.
So you could also say if a sperm and an egg come together, they're just a sperm and an egg, but when they join together, something else happens, a flash of light, or there's a creative process. And at that point, things start to differentiate. Some cells become hearts, some cells become fingertips later, and some cells become endothelium, or the endocrine system. And those cell differentiation come from the information that is telling it what form to create. So if you have different cell matrices and you play different, it could be audible or inaudible, but different vibrations, you can create the shape of something. You can determine the space. So if a human DNA is being created in a mother's womb and there's a heartbeat, then it goes from being like a zebrafish into being a human. A different matrix will have a different harmonic. For example, dolphins under the ocean have a different type of a sound quality. So you're basically looking at a whole set of embryology here. And it's really interesting to notice that the first sense that becomes formed in the fetus of all the mammals is the otic circle, which becomes the ear. So the first sense that is open to the new coming child is the ear, and the first sense that they can feel through their orifices is the sound of the mother's circulation system, or her heartbeat, the drum. Wow. Okay. And of course you can talk to a baby before it's born. Hello. Right. And this is because although it isn't seeing yet, the eyes aren't really, they're not really online yet until birth. But all the time, since I think it's week 16, the fetus is having an experience of sound. And they also say that sound is the last sense to go when people are passing away. Right. And that's why it's really beautiful to sing to someone who's passing, or to say beautiful words, or you hear those things like last rites, like the last sound that a person hears, or the first sound a person hears, like into the creation of a person's life. Yes. Wow. And so let's look at Nad Yoga a little bit more. So in the study of sound, Nad Yoga, we could also say that you can use the sound as a carrier wave. So you could say that sound is a creator, or the idea if you say it is so, it becomes so. So if you play a certain frequency, if you play the solfeggio frequencies, you're working with that like a four-dimensional. You've got time, you've got space, and you've got you've got the directions. So the sound goes out in all the directions.
And like we were doing in the workshop today, putting our voices in different directions. Yeah.
And then how that could be used as medicine, you could say that if you know what frequency is creating, you could also go back to create like the heavenly music or the harmony of the heavenly spheres or the harmonic sounds. In the Nod yoga, you can use music, for example, to be helpful. And so we can activate the senses and the sound vibrations to be like calming or to be passive on the, the fight or fight, the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system. We can help people calm down. We can see that the senses of sound become converted to mechanical energy or electrochemical energy. So if you look at the anahata chakra or the heart, you can hear the internal music, not necessarily the external. So you could take a moment and just tune into our internal self and that part that is knows itself to be itself. And in the Ram and Sita story, the Ram is like the consciousness and Sita lives in the heart. And when Ram sends his ring through Hanuman, after Sita has been abducted, he's sending a piece of himself so that Sita can recognize him. And if you look at the endocrine system, you're saying to the self, I am recognizing myself. And then if it's something that's outside of yourself, like bacteria that's not helpful or viral, then the body or the heart or the resonance or the hormone system or the system that recognizes internal and external can say that's not of myself, and it can attack and destroy that, like the macrophages can take that out of the system. So this is a really interesting way of looking at the scientific aspect of how does the body's immune system function. Does it recognize itself or not? What is the resonant tone of the internal process compared to an external? If you're in resonance with the external, for example, if you're eating a yummy like banana smoothie and your body says, oh, I need some potassium, and so it takes the banana and it sorts it all out. And it differentiates the different chemistry in the food and it keeps what it needs. Like, oh, we need potassium, magnesium, we need a little bit of that, and then we can let go of what's like fiber, for example. So we're tuning into the concept of differentiation or resonance, or we could say that there's a self realization process going on inside all the time that we're alive that is picking what is helpful and letting go of what is harmful. And so then we continue to work with a nod current. We're looking at the cosmic current of what is we're coming from, who we actually are, our real selves. And if we work on the inner sound, for example, you put your fingertips over your ears and press lightly and then pop them open, you have a sense of awakening that inner nod yoga, or the inner space inside of you. So we could use external sound for this, like how to resonate with a helpful frequency, like the solfeggios are very beneficial to the endocrine system. Or we could work with our internal sounds, like the humming, for example. But basically you're finding what is the sound current that we come from. And when we're in the sound current, sound carries, and we can feel that it's moving through our whole systems. When the sound stops, for example, when the heartbeat stops, we're done. That's our lifespan, heartbeat to heartbeat. When the heart stops, we all have heart failure.
Right.
So we could say when that stops, we return back to the original sound current. But the whole time that we're living, we are working with our individual sound current. And the more we can stay close to the sound current, which is why mantra chanting or good music or solfeggio currents help us to return to the original harmonic resonant frequencies. And you can also find community this way. If you find a situation where you create a harmonic, for example, singing together or chanting together or just being together in a way that our hearts connect, we can hum together, or we can talk about something we love together, like, oh, I love Hawaii. Do you love Hawaii too? Oh my gosh, so beautiful. I love blue. Do you love blue? So we're
that
in
creates harmonic resonance.
Yes, it creates a harmonic resonance. Always in Hawaii when we greet each other, we always find a way to connect. Like, oh, you live on Oahu, so do I. Or, oh, your auntie's brother so-and-so is the dog sitter. Oh, I knew her, she went to school with my other brother. So we're looking for connection. And when people feel connected or in harmonic resonance with their community or with their environment, they feel healthy. And so the simplified answer about whether or not these things work or not is, do you feel connected internally or in community or with the Sangha or with your spirit path? And if you do, how that helps the internal body just feel like it's has vitality, the heart has vitality.
Yeah.
And so if someone's feeling ill or they're in a hospital or they're feeling fatigued, you can encourage their system, you can revitalize their system by adding harmonic frequencies that benefit, or just positive words. Like really positive, like sharing a positiveness. Like, oh, it's so good to see you. My heart is so happy to see you.
Right.
Oh, we love being in Rishikesh. We can feel the love of the Ganga coming through and flowing through. And we embrace, and if a simple way is to embrace your environment is to say thank you to the elements that we're from. Like, wow, the air smells so good, the flowers smell so good. Wow, the earth is so fun to walk on barefoot. And we can rejoice in our setting. And in that way, we're tuning into the air, for example, water, metal, earth, fire, wood, that we're made from.
Right.
And so we're also made from sound. And so if you look at, air has a tone, earth has a tone, and so does metal, and so does wood, and if you put them, so does fire. And certain instruments carry those, like a guitar has a fiery sound to it, and a drum might have an earth tone to it. So when you make a sound healing circle, you want to include these different types of elements. Yeah, so not just the tones or the frequency, but the actual ingredient, the elements or the space.
Okay, so another part of the workshop today that I found really interesting, as someone who is, kind of moving into doing energy healings on people, you had us use our voices on our partners. You broke us into little groups, and you had us use our voices, saying the seed mantras, right? The seed mantras for the what is it? Bij mantras for the chakras as we went up the body of the person, using our voice as the healing mechanism and not even needing the tuning fork.
Right, like the Nahata, the heart chakra, was hum.
Right, so you're just putting your mouth on the, close to someone's back and just chanting into their body as a healing. How does that work? That's so amazing.
Well, we did use a great quote from Jonathan Goldsman, which is, healing is vibration plus intention. So vibration plus intention is healing. So we included those three aspects there. So we use the voice to be vibration, and then we use the intention of our own heart, our Nahata center, our heart center, to benefit each other with the healing. So we could just play a tuning fork, which is already pre-tuned to a resonance healing, or we could use, for example, our voice with adding the love on the frequency. And really, we're using the tuning forks to just carry love or aloha with us anyways, or the sharing of joy. But the idea is that we could, for example, chant the chakras. And when we say chakra, we mean the word wheel. It's a Sanskrit word which means wheel. And in the biophysiology, we could also call it the endocrine system. So we could say Vam, and we could be activating, for example, the low gonads, the ovaries or the testes. We could say Lam, Ram, Ham, Yam, Ksham, skull, and Om. So we're basically chanting up the endocrine system using the Lava, Ra, Ha, Ya, Ksha, and Aum sounds, which is really interesting to notice. If we do Om too much, we're basically staying in the top crown.
Right.
And maybe we need to come down a little,
we get airy, and then we need to ground. Yeah.
Funny, with the chant the name of God, they're saying Ram. So it's interesting that we're working more in the belly region, that particular one.
Yeah, that's the navel point.
Yeah, the chakra for the center.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. I remember in my interview with Michael Tellinger, he said your voice is a creation tool. Like sound is a creative force, right? The creative force. It's the first.
Yeah.
First there was sound, right? Yeah, I find this so interesting, and just focusing, really shining a light here for people and for myself. I feel like I've learned so much in the last year that I've been doing this show, but just really, I keep getting these examples of everything is vibration and everything is energy. And so stepping into your classes here has been, it's been great practice for me, hands-on practice, and really, getting deeper into the understanding and the actual resonance in the body of how these things work. When you put the tuning forks, when you hit it and it's vibrating and you put it on the body, like that's something that you can tangibly feel.
You can tangibly, it's an empirical evidence. Yes, and we could talk, we're in Rishikesh, which is where the great sages and saints came and sat in these caves and the mountaintops and really tuned in to what was going around them. And they had experiences in their own selves that they then practiced, just like a scientific experiment. You have an experience, then you go practice it, and you see if it's repeatable. And so this is the idea of putting things into an empirical evidence or scientific, the caldera of scientific. Does it withstand the repeatable experiment? And then when it did stand it, they would when you could repeat it, then you could teach your students, and then they would try it out in their clinics or in their their communities. And if that worked, then you can continue to teach it down. So it's really important that we use ourselves as our own clinic, like our own testing ground. Like, don't take anything that we've just said on this show for granted. Go and test this out. Go look up the Bij mantra symbols. Test out, how does this feel? Ram, Ham, Yam, Sham, Om. And try the different frequencies. How is 528 different than 258 and we could also put our hands on our head or use our hands and feel our own vibrational system. And you could look at some other systems like the Kabbalah, which said you could also add the vibration of thought, and so they have tones or sounds raised to the third power, like the power letters are added onto the sound current. And Rudolf Steiner, who came from the German tradition, felt that you could enhance a garden by using certain tonal frequencies. And he felt very strongly that you shouldn't expose children to certain frequencies while they were still developing. Like they should have, lots of fifths, for example, which is like a shape of like a five-sided growth shape. It has a expanding quality to it. So, it's interesting to look at these different experiments that have already been done and then do it ourselves. So it's always good to be skeptical, but it's always also good to be practical. Try it out on yourself or your neighbors around you or in your yoga class, and really tune in to how you feel before, during, and after. And then you repeat it again, before, during, and after. The same way you would try new foods, or you would try some different habits. So again, don't take, and we can talk about mathematical frequencies, we can talk about chemistry, we can talk about color as vibration, we can talk about our ears as a sensory organ, we can talk about the consciousness, like where does consciousness exist? Is it outside of space and time, or does it have to be inside of space and time? And we can experiment with ourselves and explore. These are supposed, hopefully stepping stones for people to be curious, because the first stage of a scientific experiment is to be curious, like, well, what is a Bij mantra? Or what happens if I stand on my head while I'm doing these things? And I put my hands together and I make the heat and fire. Oh, that's like the element of fire. And how does it feel like the water? Or the element of earth? Or how do you connect with a favorite color or a magic number? Like, oh, I love 11. Well, that's actually an octave, like doom, doom, or two-tone doom, doom. Or, ratios or drawing sacred geometry, for example, mandalas. These are all entry points into the idea of sound as a study. Or silence, the idea of studying Nad yoga, like the silent, the unsounded sound.
Yeah, beautiful. Anything else you feel is critically important for my audience to know?
Well, I do have a sound school. It's called Hawaii Healing Sound School. It's in Hawaii. And it came about because we had some people in our community that had been diagnosed with cancer. So I guess it's important maybe to speak to the passion of why we do what we do. And I felt very strongly that it could be benefited by sound. And so we began to run community groups with the person who was going through the health crisis in the center. And we would use both cacophony, dissonance, harmonic resonance, overtone, and different instruments to give a situation where the person could release whatever's going through and then embrace new energy. Now, I would say to you that all the people involved went through traditional medical treatment for cancer, which included, for example, radiation or chemo, but they also included an allopathic with a complementary component. And everyone that went through our sound circles thrived through their cancer experience. And they've all gone on to do fabulous things. And so because I ran this empirical, evidence-based experiment, I became very passionate about sharing this. And there are wonderful teachers around the world that teach in voice and Mongolian overtone chanting and instruments and harmonics, and you can learn about tuning forks and gongs and how do Tibetan bowls compare to crystal bowls, and you can work with rhythms, certain rhythms in the heartbeat. But the idea is to explore how we can create a harmonic resonance experience that is in giving the body a chance to be more vital, or having the flow, the removing of the blockages. Just the same way, if you're a farmer and you're watering your fields and one's dry and one's too wet, you want to move the water around so that you water the dry fields and you let the wet ones drain out during the seasons.
Got it.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end, is just to really encourage people who are listening to become curious. Yeah, and not to make any guarantees like, well, if you play 528, does it do this certain thing? Well, let's find out. If you change the music from acoustic instead of electronic, how does that feel different? If you change it to 432 frequency instead of 440, how do we feel? And to be curious, to inquire, and then if you want to learn more about it, you can actually go to a training, or come take a course, or talk to a yoga teacher about the many sounds of Om. And I'm sure there's online resources as well.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we point everybody to your website and all your trainings and everything that's available that you're offering, which is so much. You've offered so much here at the festival, and I'm feeling so blessed that our paths have crossed.
It was so great to have Hawaii aloha here in the Himalayas, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you for everything that you're doing and for your passion and for helping to heal people. We really need this work being done, so thank you for your passion.
I really feel that we're in a time of frequency. We're getting beyond skin color and gender and even a little bit of culture. Like, if we can tune into the frequency, we can find a way to connect with everybody that is through a vibrational frequency tone.
Right.
And this is a potential future path right through the heart of peace, or Shanti. And what the world really needs right now is for people to just enjoy being here together on this beautiful planet, spend some time cleaning up the water, love up our blue skies, plant some trees, and pay attention to the gift of life that's from heartbeat to heartbeat. Why waste it, right?
Amen. Hallelujah.
Oh.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Katie. Namaste.
Namaste. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks so much for answering the call to be here today. I'm so glad you're part of our tribe of activated rainbow warriors. If you found the show in any way empowering or inspiring, I would be so grateful if you would share the show on social media or with friends and family that you think would benefit from these conversations. And also, rate and review the show in iTunes. This is really the very best way to help support the show and help us get noticed by others who are looking for the sort of content that we're sharing. Now, notice there are no outside ads playing here. That's because the show is supported by you, the listener. You can become a patron of the show with a small monthly donation by checking out the perks on our Patreon page at patreon.com/visionary lifestyle and signing up there. There's also a one-time donation button on the podcast page of the website if that suits you better. And just so you know, your donations help to cover the necessary out-of-pocket monthly expenses to produce the show, and will also help us grow so we can inspire and educate even more people. And hey tribe, I'd love to hear from you. Visit me at visionary-lifestyle.com and please tell me your comments and questions. I really look forward to connecting with you. I love you. Namaste.